Hey, good evening, and welcome to episode 5,
Yes.
Keeping Up with the Dyers here at Whole Living Farm. And this evening we're talking about,
Fort Rucker,
Mother Rucker.
South Alabama.
Second duty station, picking up where we left off for Fort Knox. We went there, I was a medic there. Backtrack just a smidge, before we went to Fort Knox, we had horses before we joined the Army. We had horses and wound up selling them before I guess I enlisted and we took off. And then because we didn't think there was any way possible you could have livestock being in the Army.
We actually sold them because we were poor.
Yeah, we sold them because we were poor too.
Yeah.
But yeah, but we also did not know that you could have livestock in the Army. And we discovered at Fort Knox, at least you could then, you can't now. I've learned since then. But then there was a place on post, an old stable, where you could keep your horses if you had horses. You couldn't have like other stock, you couldn't have like goats or a dairy cow or anything, but you could have horses. And then that was also true. That kind of sets us up for Fort Rucker. What took us to Fort Rucker was I reclassed, which means I changed my job in the Army from medic to air traffic controller, and it's kind of teasing, but it's also kind of true. When it came time to re-enlist, people asked me, why did you switch over from medic to air traffic control? And I say air conditioning. There's some kidding in that, but there's also some truth in that. But anyway, we got to Fort Rucker, found out that they also had a stable, and I'll just let that set us up. You wanna touch on any of that?
Yep. At Fort Rucker, Avery had a lot better working situation. At Fort Knox, he worked. Avery says the number grows every time I tell the story, but he worked like 70 hours a week.
Yeah, it was a
he
little
went
better.
in super early. He came home super late every day. And at Fort Rucker, it was different. By the time we left, he was home by like 2 o'clock every day, and we remember that as like these happy golden years. We had such a good time at Fort Rucker, specifically the first time, because his work schedule was so accommodating to us being able to do things, and so we just super enjoyed it. And when we first got there, we lived on post. Not a townhouse, it was just a duplex, so we had a much bigger yard. Our backyard had a playground right out our back door. We brought the garden boxes with us and quickly unloaded them and set them up and started, we planted food in it, or seed in it, and grew lots of great things. We grew, I remember green peppers specifically. Like I had said last time, Maddie loves green peppers. We grew green peppers. We grew carrots. We grew onions. And we learned a lot about, are they possums? What are they in Alabama? Not possums.
Armadillos.
Armadillos, yes. We learned a lot about armadillos because we would go out in the morning and there would be like the weirdest holes, and whatever it was didn't want our plants, it wanted the bugs in the soil. And so like when people say, oh, you like gardening, and you know what, oh my gosh, you've lived so many places, what is it like gardening everywhere? And I always say, I think I spend the first year everywhere learning about the pests of that area, because like armadillos aren't everywhere. And living in Ohio, even had we gardened there, living in Kentucky, had we gardened there, I would not have known anything about an armadillo because it wasn't like a common pest. But down there it was common. And so anyway, we had armadillos there, and they really like to eat the bugs out of your dirt, which then uproots your plants and kills them. So we set traps for them or whatever. But that was kind of a fun adventure. The kids, we would like watch for armadillos because they don't come out till it's dark out and whatever. Also, like I already said, our most productive crop to date, children. Kaisik came into our life. That's our son, our third child. He was born at Fort Rucker, the first time that we were there. And yeah, so in our first house, we had a great yard. Avery had a great schedule. So garden was going well. We had Bub, adorable little guy, and go ahead.
Yep. So we had, like she said, we had the garden, but we also got back into horses. So we weren't there. I'm talking like we were there maybe a month. and I started looking for horses, and we wound up getting a flea bitten gray that we named Tecumseh.
Flea bitten's a color if you're not
flea
familiar
bitten
with
gray
horses.
is it's like a white or a
Speckled
gray
yeah.
horse with a brown or black flecks in it, peppered. We thought for Maddie, but Maddie was about 4 at the time, going on 5, and we were going to try and use Tecumseh for her first horse. Bought her and just realized it wasn't going to work out for that. She wasn't crazy by any stretch of the imagination, but she wasn't quite as broke as a 4.5-year-old needed.
Yeah.
So we wound up selling her. We also bought another quarter horse for me that his name was Ace. Pearl is protesting. She wants in.
Yeah.
She's ready to have her nightly hay. At any rate, had Ace. Kept him the whole time we were there, but then we found Maddie's horse. We found Chip, and they have been together ever since then. Another quick story: after we had been there it was over a year. It was 2010, I believe. So we got there in 2009.
Yeah.
In 2010, early 2011, I found my horse that Chicken's trying to go in. It's crazy out here. I found my mare that we had sold before we joined the Army. By this point, it had been 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And when we sold her, the guy I bought her from took her to a performance horse sale in Ohio for it. He sold her for us.
Yeah.
I never even knew who bought her. But turns out the University of Findlay bought her and made her an all-around horse. So they have a horsemanship program there, and they used her for their green reining, green cutting, that's quarter horse, cow horse, stock horse type events. Anyway, they had sold her after they had her for a few years to a fella in Indiana, and then he had her for sale, and I just reached out to him and called him one day. I couldn't afford her what he wanted for her. It was more than what I had paid for her the first time, and it was more than what I had sold her for when I sold her. Any rate, talked to him for a while. He really wanted me to have her back, so we worked it out. Long story short, we worked it out. We wound up with her again, and we still have her today. So that's kind of a neat story, how we were reunited with my mare. And then I guess we'll just go into the questions. Does that sound good?
Sure.
So what we learned, I rode a ton there, and my horsemanship and stockmanship really increased a lot. And when I say stockmanship, I mean horses and cows both are herd animals. So you treat them very similar. They have the same kind of, it's all about angles, they have the same drive, the same fight or flight sort of mentality.
Yeah.
So that was definitely something I learned there. I mean, I rode all the time. And then another thing we learned was, like she said, the gardening. We really had
A successful
a successful garden there, but we spent like $500 on that soil, so
it should be successful.
it should have been a successful garden. But it was. We had really great plants, and I guess that kind of goes in. Do you want to talk more about what we learned? Or?
Yeah, I had more of what we learned.
Okay.
So while we were at Fort Rucker, the Lord really went before us and put people in our path who just taught us all kinds of things. Avery's talking about natural horsemanship or his ability to work with herd animals. There was a lady at the barn who really sparked that interest and just really was hey, and we were teachable because there was a lot we didn't know, and we were, I guess Avery's humble enough to say, gosh, I don't know everything. I could use some work with Ace because he has this he gets scared really easy, and she was just so patient and able to work with him. And so anyway, so the Lord put her in our path, and she just opened our eyes to natural horsemanship type stuff. And then when we were there with Maddie being 4 and getting a horse, we came up with a little family saying, because 4-year-olds, I don't know. You give your kid a puppy and you wonder why they don't walk it. You give your child, your 4-year-old, a horse and you wonder why you're the one cleaning stalls. I don't know why I had this vain imagination that the horse was going to not need care. But so we would be out there and it was Alabama and it was hot, and so we came up with a family saying, if dyers don't quit, they finish what they start. And so we'd be out there and we'd pick stalls, you know, or whatever it was. And I can remember both Maddie and Amazra. So Amazra's probably 2 and Maddie's 4 or 5, and they're out there and they're picking stalls, and Amazra will say, dyers don't quit, we finish what we start. And they're like smaller than the wheelbarrow, and the stall pick's huge. It was adorable, and it was very like challenging for me. You know, like, okay, we're gonna finish this even though it's hot and I want to be done too. And then those garden boxes, they were so productive, and while we were there, our first house was set for demolition. That's how lovely of a house it was. And so we got moved to a different house because they were putting up newer housing. So anyway, we got moved to this newer house, and so we had to. 6 months
before we left.
Yeah, 6 months before we had to leave, but they wouldn't let us wait, even knowing we were leaving, because our house was set for demolition, and you can't, you know, live there while they blow it up. So, so we move, and we had so many green peppers, that we ended up inviting people over.
So this is transitioning into what we loved.
Okay, I was gonna say it's what we learned, because hospitality. Will you please stop?
Okay, so maybe it's both.
Yeah.
Learned and loved.
Yeah. So we have so many green pepper plants, and our pastor at the time, he would always say, after service today, take somebody to lunch. And so Avery and I were just like, let's invite people over to our house for lunch after church today. We have so many green peppers. So we made stuffed peppers, and we gave kind of an open invitation. We were a fairly small church, and people came over for lunch. And so then the next week, we gave another invitation, and people came over for lunch. And so, you know, we learned about serving others, and that like awkward time where you start having people over and you don't realize like having a lot of people means you have to have a lot of napkins, or having a lot of people means you need to have a lot of forks or whatever. And so there was a lot of learning in that, but then it totally became something that we loved, because it was a place where it ended up being where there was an open invitation to our home after church for lunch, and it became somewhat of a potluck, and then there were like family hikes through the woods afterwards before everybody would go home, and like we just loved it. We could just share our life with the people that we were there with. We got to know each other. The kids got to spend that time together. Our kids got to practice hospitality because everybody's playing with our kids' toys. And it was we just absolutely loved it. Like I said, we remember Fort Rucker the first time as like those golden years. And we even knew it while we were there. We're like, we are living our dream. This is fantastic. Avery was coming home in a decent time. His job was not overly difficult, especially by comparison to what he had done before with being on so many hours. And we had all this family time. Avery got to ride all the time. He got to ride with Maddie. We met some people who are still our friends to this day. And just people who were we've moved to different duty stations, and so delighted to find them there as well. And, you know, like it was such a blessing, and it was definitely the Lord going before us and just laying at that foundation. Just here, I'm taking care of you, and here you go, grow, and it was beautiful.
Mazra has something to say. Come over here and say it, Maz. Okay, she's not going to come over and say it.
That's what we loved.
Yeah. Well, and also, I mean, you already mentioned it, another thing we loved was Bub. Bub was born.
Yes, and we do love Bub. And looking back now that we have 5 kids, because your kids probably do the same thing. Tell me something about when I was little. And so we have like funny stories about everyone. And then Avery and I just kind of look at each other and we're like, Bub was such an easy baby.
He was.
We're like super chill baby. We're trying to like, you know, train Rosemary to go to sleep without being held. And we're like, do you remember doing this with Bub? No, I think Bub just went to bed. I think we just were like, hey, it's bedtime. And Bub was like, sign me up. Let's go to bed. And he's still like that to this day.
He is.
But
you give the boy a cookie and a pillow and he's done.
Yeah, he's good. And we love Bub. Yeah. What we learned, what we love.
How we left it. So how we left it was we did not take... You can't get over the cookie and the pillow. Alright, so how we left it, we did not take our soil and our garden boxes again.
We
actually we actually gave that black gold and the garden boxes to some friends of ours who actually blessed us tenfold in return. They gave us a horse trailer.
That we still have.
That we still have. Yes, our horse trailer is sitting out there right now. And they took their new horse trailer that they bought and took half of our stuff, better than half of our stuff, from Alabama to, and this is transitioning, to our next duty station, which was Fort Carson, Colorado. So we left it very similar to how we left Fort Knox, because we lived on the installation. I would say our backyard was a smidge greener than it was when we got there.
And if you ever move to Fort Rucker and you are on Hartel Way and you go behind number 11 back into the woods, you may find 2 avocado trees.
Yes.
Because we left 2
our avocado
trees that we could not take with us. They didn't fit. They would have died. So there might.
I left them bucket and all too. So if there is a bucket that has an avocado tree growing out of it and you see it, you're welcome. We left you an avocado tree.
So we did leave it maybe a little greener.
Yeah. So yeah, I forgot about that. That's a good call. So yeah, that finishes up Fort Rucker the first time. Yep. We will get into Fort Carson next time, and I don't want to give too much of a spoiler, but Fort Carson was our gateway drug to homesteading. I'll leave it at that, and we'll get into what we got into there in the next episode. All right, hey, like, subscribe, please subscribe. It is free to subscribe. I don't know why it means something to me, but it feels like we're growing when I see the subscriptions increase. So if you don't do it for any other reason, I know it's rough because I am sharing this on Facebook, on both of our farm page and my personal page, our personal page. So you have to log into YouTube and then hit subscribe. But please, just do the extra step for me. I'd really appreciate it. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know when we got a new video coming out. And y'all have a blessed